The past few years, focaccia's kinda had a moment. So I thought I'd mix three creators' techniques, Zachary Bird, Steve Cusato, and Thomas Strakker, to help you make one and to blow them all out of the water. To get started, take 100 grams of water, 50 grams of starter, bread flour, wheat flour, and mix. This is our pre-ferment. If instant yeast is your thing, don't worry. I'll leave those adjustments in the full recipe. Go ahead and let this rise at room temperature, and after about 4 to 6 hours, voila! You, my friend, have created a poolish. This is gonna give your dough extensibility, shelf life, and overall that artisanal depth of flavor that you just can't get with no need overnight focaccias, in my opinion. Next, in 975 grams of water, float test your poolish to make sure it's active and feeling frisky. No float, no gas inside that dough. Mix in 1225 grams of all-purpose flour, which will give you 2 full large sheet pans of focaccia dough. If it's just you, feel free to cut the recipe in half, or don't. No one's judging here. For those of you lucky enough to have a stand mixer, I would start with the paddle to incorporate everything and then switch to a dough hook on medium speed for about 6 minutes. Make sure to scrape down the sides to avoid any dry clumps of flour. And once that dough is shaggy, we're gonna leave it alone so that flour can absorb all that water. While it rests, boil and mash 2 medium-sized yellow potatoes, which, dun-da-da-da, is our first technique from Zachary Bird. Adding in this element of potato, along with 25 grams of water, 35 grams of salt, and 15 grams of olive oil is gonna restrict gluten from forming, giving you an insanely tender focaccia. Using the pincer method, which is just an old school style of hand mixing, we're gonna make sure the potato, the salt, everything is well incorporated. Then we'll switch to the ribaude method, which, unlike the hand motion, is not Italian. It is an invention from a famous French baker who is trying to replicate the motion of a double-arm dough mixer. I usually do this step for about 2 to 3 minutes. It's great because it helps speed up the gluten development, and it makes me feel like I earned my next rest. At this point, most YouTubers would cut away to a product sponsor, but as I'm new and I have none, you get dog. If you subscribe, I'll definitely make sure he's got some cameos in the future. After we're back, we have our last step, the coil fold. With a wet hand, we're gonna scoop up the dough and tuck it underneath itself. Then, spin the bowl and repeat. Beyond strengthening, this is aligning gluten structure and helping to prepare it for overnight rest. Then show that focaccia some love and drizzle on about 1/4 cup of olive oil. Rub it down until it separates from the bowl, wrap it up nice and tight, and give it some beauty rest because we have a big day tomorrow. Wow, it never gets old. Look at this thing. It's airy, bubbly, has a marshmallowy texture, and it is ready to be divided. So let's dust our bench, dust the top of our dough, and I put some around the edges as well. It helps to release from whatever container you happen to be fermenting in. After turning out the dough, I like to make sure it's as even as possible when I divide. So I pull it towards me, I pull it away from me, and then I tug it from the sides to make sure it's as level as possible. There's no need for a scale on this one, we can just eye it. And to help your dough cutter, I put a little bit of flour across the belly just to make sure it glides through easy and separates without much hassle. After that, just grab one side of the dough, bring it to the middle, and then repeat on the opposite side. This is called a letter fold, and it's pretty straightforward. Gently grab your dough and slide it off to the side. Repeat with the other piece. Something I was taught while working in bakeries and restaurants is cleaning as you go. It's really important to clean up your bench and avoid any random bits joining the ride. Prepping our dough for the final proof, we're gonna oil 2 large sheet trays. Whatever oil you got works, but I prefer extra virgin olive oil when working with focaccia. Cradle these beauties like it's a newborn and then flip it over seam down with a little guidance to get it into the most rectangular shape possible. Repeat with the second piece of dough, then grab that olive oil again and cover them generously. Not only is this gonna give it that iconic focaccia flavor, but it's gonna protect all of our hard work from drying out. Cover and let rise for 2 hours while we assemble the toppings. First of which is confit garlic. Toss in about 10 cloves of garlic, 2 cups of olive oil, and let this go at 250 for 2 hours. The garlic gets deep and toasty, and that oil becomes liquid gold. And guess what? Ding, 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 it's our second technique from Steve Cusato. Steve adds a touch of mint to his red pesto, which adds this brightness and a subtle sweetness, which is gonna set this focaccia off. In a blender, add 3 cloves of garlic, 1 pint cherry tomatoes, 1/2 cup of slivered almonds, 1/2 cup olive oil, 1 teaspoon cracked black pepper, 1 tablespoon kosher salt, 3 full bunches of basil leaves and 5 to 10 mint leaves, 1 cup of grated pecorino romano, and then give your mixture a blend. But we're not going to stop at just a red pesto. We're going to cover the other half of our focaccia with our final technique from Thomas Strakker. Inspired by his Calvo Negro pasta, we're making a pesto with lacto kale, which beyond the intense green color, gives it an earthiness you really can't find in regular recipes. After removing the stems, boil 5 stalks for about 3 minutes. Then shock it in ice water, which I forgot to film. Rinse that blender and throw in 1/4 cup of pine nuts, 2 garlic cloves, 2 bunches of basil, our boiled kale, and 1/2 cup of olive oil. To counteract the heat from our blender ruining the vibrant color of our pesto, add 3 to 4 normal cubes of ice, and avoid winning a Darwin Award, which I attempted here. Follow that with the zest of 1 whole lemon, which is going to wake this pesto up. Finish it off with 1 cup of grated parm, or the pecorino from earlier, it's just going to make a punchier pesto. Blend it up, give it a taste, and adjust the salt to your liking. Alright folks, after 2 hours your focaccia is ready to be topped. But first, oil up those digits because we know why we really love focaccia, the dimples. Dim the lights, light a candle, and gently press the focaccia across the whole pan. Grab your toppings and start to lay down your pestos. With 2 columns of sauce and 3 rows of toppings, we're going to create 6 different flavor profiles, essentially making a focaccia appetizer sampler. The toppings, you can eye it or use parchment paper to help. I went for marinated artichoke, a mix of Kalamata olive that I followed up with freshly diced rosemary, and nestle that confit garlic right in the middle. Because cheese makes everything better, put down a few hunks of mozzarella, another melty cheese of your choice. I went with Taleggio. When I make this again, I'll probably opt for something like a Havarti, which will hold up better in the oven. Bake it off at 450 F for 20 to 25 minutes. And look at that! Our bubbles have charred, our flavors have mingled. Grab your trusty spatula and turn this focaccia out on some wire racks to preserve that crisp. And speaking of, obviously I'm biased, but this is a thing of beauty. Any Italian restaurant would be proud to have this on their menu, and you're gonna have it in your home. All that's left to do is to taste this thing. It's not very often I get taken by surprise from my own recipes, but this thing hits. It's light, crunchy, intense, but gentle, and there's 6 entirely different flavors. Some may call that focaccia, some trade pizza, but I'll tell you what, it is so worth the effort. I worked in Manhattan bakeries, Brooklyn pizzerias, and this stands up to them all. Thanks again to everybody featured. Their links are below. See you next time.